Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Sigma podcast, today with good friend and colleague Gege Gatt, with whom we shall be discussing the role of AI in gaming, but from the point of view of RG. And we're going to get the perspective of someone who is not embedded in the gaming industry. Gege, thank you for joining us today.
Trev, thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Gege, so this is part of a series that I am doing on AI and RG, how they can help each other. So your view, how do you see AI working together with RG? Is it a relationship of collaboration or is it one that hinders each other?
So, Trev, artificial intelligence is great at detecting patterns, right? It is nothing but a mathematical engine that can find the proverbial needle in a haystack. So what AI is good at in an RG context is detecting risky behaviors. And the highlight is not the word risk, but is the word behavior, right? And the reason for that is because what AI can do today is not simply analyze transactional volumes, but analyze the behavior that has led to that particular transactional volume. For example, are we seeing rapid increases in bet size or frequency or time patterns, such as nighttime play, right? So, or having unusual multiple deposits.
Brief time out here. You're the third guest I've had. So we're not recording these in order, but you're the third guest I've had. And everyone has focused on the nighttime.
Right, because erratic behavior is the most common precursor of risky behavior. And that is what pattern recognition is about. It's about being able to identify the seed which could possibly grow into a risky plant. So what AI is doing at its very core, Trev, is it is adopting an understanding of what anomaly is, right? When does a player deviate from a baseline which is personal to them? So every person has a different way of interacting with a game, with a computer system. But once we understand what that baseline is, we can spot when a player jumps out of that typical behavior. And the good thing about AI is that it's real time, right? So most of our computer systems would look historically for patterns of incorrectness. Because AI can process hordes of data in real time, we can now, in a session, during particular play activity, identify risk and act on it.
Okay. Two separate questions here. One of the things we've discussed is nighttime. Would AI be capable, I believe it is, of taking into account geographical realities? An example given to me was, in Spain, they sleep in the afternoon, their famous siesta, they eat very late, 10 o'clock, and then they start gambling afterwards. But that is a cultural reality due to their geographic location. So would AI, I believe it would, but be capable of taking out or taking into context the geographical and cultural reality of each country?
So artificial intelligence can combine multiple data sources. It can combine multiple layers of understanding, of culture, of ethical frameworks, of behaviors. So what we could do today is get transactional data, behavioral data, third-party data like credit or identity systems. We can understand jurisdictional data, which is very culturally driven. And we can fuse all of these data points together to create a rich context of understanding about the player.
Okay.
And this is how it is different from our traditional RG, because traditional RG was all about rule-based systems. If this, then that. But what AI is doing is it's getting all these different data points. Some of them are culturally driven, as you pointed out. Others are owned by third-party providers, like KYC providers or identity providers. And you combine them into a rich, contextual understanding of the player's identity.
So you're talking about the personalization of data in order to identify the pattern?
Yes, we are talking about the risk of one person in his or her personal journey. And so what this leads to is a risk scoring framework. So we now have AI that can look at all of these data patterns and then create a sort of dynamic risk score. Imagine an integer from 0 to 100, which changes over time. It doesn't.
So it evolves. So the number varies.
Absolutely, because your behavior changes over time based on emotional circumstances. So as your behavior changes, your risk score must change. And then the company can prioritize those players based on the risk score, which should require intervention.
And this leads me perfectly to the second question. You just said the magic word. The company can, not the company will. So it's all well and good that we have all of these systems available to us. They are tools. Technology is a tool which, if used wisely, will benefit the stakeholders. But what if one of the stakeholders says, no, I don't want the technology?
So I think it is about competitive advantage. Sometimes, Trev, you hear an argument which places RG and regulatory compliance as in opposition to profit and to growth. It's not true. I believe that today those companies that can mesh technology into its operations so as to care and personalize the experience of every player will be the ones that will have a competitive advantage, because player experience is sacrosanct. Player experience and player care, the value of care and dignity in what we do, will make companies which really cherish these values in their gameplay as being the ones which are most pro the customer, pro the care environment which you need. Of course, that's beyond the regulatory obligation to care for the customer. So yes, I think it is a competitive advantage today to care in an effective RG framework.
So you have this reality of AI, which can assist in developing tools to identify risky behavior, markers of harm, etc., etc. Do you have any real world examples of how, maybe not in the gaming world, Gege, but maybe by analogy, we can apply them to the gaming world?
Although even in the gaming world, I mean, you see a lot of operators who are in the Premier League scene when they are observing a sudden increase in bet size and bet frequency after a near win within the context of that game environment. They could trigger a safety alert, which is going to allow the operator to intervene with the support team. I mean, we've also seen, there was a very interesting study published on the Journal of Mental Health and Addiction, which found that in Britain, in Canada, and in Spain, machine learning models, so the core fundamental AI capabilities, can predict self-reported problem gambling from just looking at behavioral variables. So not actually transactional variables, just behavioral variables.
In what sense?
How quick you scroll, how much you zoom, how much you pause, how much you are spending time on a particular page. So that is the behavior which you show as a user on technology.
So behavior leads to trends as well.
Behavior leads to trends, and it leads to a mindset shift.
In what sense?
I think gaming operators need to shift their mindset to one whereby AI doesn't just remain a bolt-on feature that you purchase and add to a game environment at some late stage of your operation. Yeah. The mindset shift is towards AI as core infrastructure.
So you're putting it at the center of your development.
It's at the center, it's at the front end, it's in your monitoring structures, it's in your risk scoring capabilities, it's in your intervention workflows. It is not an afterthought. It is the critical foundation which makes a gaming company competitive and able to perform its regulatory obligations.
And then game development and game in the maths development.
So firstly, we can increase the capability of human oversight. So let's start with operations.
Okay.
So a step before game development is operations, right? So there are two areas of massive opportunity. I think the first one is customer service automation. So you have human teams which are stressed by the amount of repetitive queries, which don't find satisfaction in their job by providing repetitive answers to repetitive questions. Over there, I think we can have an AI solution to automate that entire workflow. But even when it comes to not being reactive, so we've seen operators which are now using AI to predict new risks, but, and here's your question, to predict new game environments. So how do you track the change of culture in a country? How do you track macroeconomic trends which indicate the likes and dislikes of the next generation? AI gives us that crystal ball. It gives us that opportunity to flag and predict changing patterns of taste. And that can mean that game operators can gain more of an insight as to what will produce the likely sticky game environment that tomorrow's customer will appreciate.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And have there been any, let's say, breakthrough evolution in AI, which has actually, we like to say the iPhone 1, iPhone 2, we're at the iPhone 17. Yes. Is there the AI, I don't know what version, ChatGPT is at version 5, right? So, have we seen any major developments?
Yes, I think there are 4 major breakthroughs worth noting. I think the first one, Trev, is the idea that as we increased more computational power, so AI available on a tap, from third-party providers, we were able to move into the world of more advanced behavioral analytics. Okay. So platform operators today can continuously monitor every dimension of the player's environment. So what are the bets? What's the frequency? What's the time of day? What's the game type? So we can enable more proactive risk detection because we have more computational power to do so. That's a breakthrough which didn't exist 5 years ago.
And does that breakthrough link to personalization? Because the more you talk, the more I'm saying, okay, AI is leading us to breaking it down from groups to actually individuals.
You're absolutely correct. If we were talking in a marketing room 5 years ago, we would talk about segmentation into profiles of users. Forget that. We now are in the world, in the age, where we'll personalize everyone and everything to the value of 1, to your individual need. I think the second breakthrough...
And you can do that with AI.
Absolutely, right? It gives us the computational and predictive power we didn't have. I think the second breakthrough, which is worth looking at, is this idea that we are now using unsupervised learning mechanisms. So AI learns through a machine learning process. The most recent breakthrough is using unsupervised learning, where the AI learns itself by observing unstructured data. And this is allowing us to spot deviations from standard gameplay, which our human-oriented brain playbook just couldn't think of, right? So when AI beat the first chess grandmaster, his response was, that was an inhuman move. It's not inhuman, it's just it's not common in our playbook of playing chess. So by using unsupervised learning, we can spot new anomalies. I think the third breakthrough definitely must be NLP, natural language processing. I mean, using AI to understand language, to monitor forums, to provide customer service automation. It's changing the game environment. And the final and last, so we said there are 4, I think it's generative AI. The ability for AI in real time to adapt to the context and generate new images, words, and content. So, for example, imagine a cooling off message in a responsible gaming workflow, which is bespoke to you which is not written in the same way for every, groups of thousands of people in your cohort. But generative AI creates a bespoke cooling off message which acts on your psychology, on your trigger, on your term. That is effectiveness.
Okay. If you remember, one of the first times I interviewed you, I brought up one of my favorite movie series called The Terminator. And in one of the movies, we find out that Skynet has taken over the launch control of nuclear weapons and has started Armageddon. And the machines literally have taken over. So, I don't think we've reached that stage. But now you're talking about self-learning. Good. Is there any stage you envisage where one could actually take away the decision-making on the RG front and give it into the hands of, I'm not going to call it the machines, to the hands of AI? Because at the end of the day, this is a commercial reality, and we are looking at numbers at the end of the day.
Okay. I think
Am I thinking too far ahead, or?
No, I think you asked the perfect question. There are 3 guiding principles which form the answer. I think the first principle, Trev, is that AI should always be an augmentation mechanism and not a replacement mechanism. So yes, let's enhance speed, let's enhance scale, let's enhance accuracy, let's enhance monitoring and personalization, but the final judgment needs to remain with humans, right? That means that you need to think of AI like a radar, not like a pilot. It's not an autopilot which takes you on a journey. Think of AI as a radar. It is scanning behavioral data. It is flagging anomalies. It is detecting risk in your screen. And then the final decision would require human validation. That doesn't mean there isn't an opportunity to automate parts of that too, but you need human judgment. And so the second principle is this: we need to avoid over-reliance, because if we don't have clear escalation protocols, if we don't understand concepts like transparency and auditability and human involvement, then we are going to become overly reliant on a tool which, quite frankly, we don't understand too well. And if you allow me just this last 5 seconds, I'll say a third principle: ethics. I don't think we can have a podcast where we don't talk about ethics and trust. So AI models are not going to understand context like a human. So we can see that a player's pattern changed, but we don't understand why it changed. Perhaps the player's partner has passed away.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's illness.
Sickness.
So I think we need to ensure that our automation methodologies still have empathy. And whilst we want to ensure that the system is efficient, we still will need RG teams to be well trained.
On that note, we thank you, Gege, for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you here. You always give us some really good insights on the subjects at hand. I'd like to thank you once again for joining us. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, who make this possible with your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe the videos and the Sigma World page on YouTube. And till the next podcast, I thank you for joining us.